Hello and welcome to Ditch Witch Diaries. We're here today and we're going to talk about, it's kind of the second tree in that variety of Populus, Aspen, and let's just get right into it. Here we are. We're going to talk about Aspen.
Ooh.
I know, I love this picture. It's such a great picture. So
Mm,
AI sometimes does such a good job and I didn't really have to fight with
mm,
it. Sometimes I have to
nice.
I hate quarreling with AI.
Mm.
Bickering. Let's just get into it. Aspen. And a lot of this stuff, I'm going to touch on some of the stuff that we had in the presentation for Poplar, but it's kind of, I do a different take on it. We have our different styles. So enjoy the recap. So Aspen is part of the Populus family, and this is kind of a botanical drawing. And these are aspen trees. This is kind of an image of like when the leaves turn versus like when they're green. And this is like an aspen grove here walking through a
Mm.
I know, I love
I
this
want to
picture.
go walk in that.
Me too. Me too. So, of course, my lovely prose. The wild rose like a wreath above, the ash tree's fairy keys, the aspen trembling as if love were whispered in the breeze. I love that. There's
That's
another one.
nice.
I know,
Yeah.
there's another one too. And the wind, full of wantonness, woos like a lover the young aspen trees till they tremble all over. And that's Thomas More.
Hmm.
So there we go.
Nice.
Yeah, so the parts used, all the parts are used. We're going to go over the different parts. And the other names, there wasn't many. Old Wives' Tongue,
Mm.
Edad, Kritok. So those,
Hmm.
I couldn't find a ton though.
Yeah.
And then the correspondences, the element, so we have like two. Franklin says fire, air says Briggs, and air seems pretty smart, so
Mm.
I'm gonna go with that. The planet,
Yeah.
the moon, again, we saw the moon in Poplar as well. So Boyer, who says the moon. So Franklin says both the sun and Mercury, and I could this the Mercury is definitely because it's associated with communication. Briggs says Mercury as well.
Mm.
So, um, whatever, moon, Mercury, sun as well is in there. Astrological
Mm.
sign I found was Aquarius and probably the
Nice.
air thing and communication as well. I didn't find anything for
Mm.
the temperature. So the tarot, the high priestess I found, and
Mm.
like I found two. So high priestess, because it's all about like between the worlds and hidden meanings, which could be the moon as well. But I think it's also this idea of like how old it is and wisdom and like this idea
Yeah.
like of knowing and of like, yeah, there's a lot of that. And I like that it's female centered too. So there you go.
Mm.
And then death in the Celtic Wisdom Tarot, it is the card of death, and that seems
Mm.
appropriate. So, as we will soon see. The chakra, the throat, or the third eye. And so we talked about both of these and why they might be the case when we talked about ravens, talking about poplar. But the third eye, obviously, like communication and otherworldly communication,
Mm.
especially. And and then the throat, communication, and then third eye is like other realms.
Mm.
So like getting messages or giving messages with the other realms. The Sabbats I found were Samhain, Yule, and Mabon. And the goddesses. So I Persephone, we talked about, so and all death goddesses. So Persephone goes to the underworld, and we're going to talk about some stories about why that might be important. And then Mut is an Egyptian mother goddess, and
Mm.
Nanette is the female aspect of Noon, who's a personification of the primeval watery abyss, which I love.
Mm. Love. Yeah.
The Valkyries, and then we talked about the White Goddess. So it's a
Mm.
single primordial goddess figure worshipped under many names, like the Tremble Goddess, who governs the cycles of life, death, and rebirth, and is linked to the moon. So we talked. That's Robert Graves, and we talked about that with when we talked about Populus or the Poplar. And the moon phase is either like the waning moon, and we can see why that might be. So things are like it's it's really has like this death closing kind of feeling, shadowy.
Mm.
Anyway, so and also though it is an Ogham tree, and the moon that is attached with it is November 25th to December 22nd. So then you can see why Yule might be associated.
Mm.
Samhain is associated because of this like death aspect to it, and Mabon, you talked about it being associated with autumn. So this,
Mm.
yeah. So there you go. The crystalline stone that I found associated was either black opal or black tourmaline, and it does have protection qualities to it, but black opal is an interesting one that I found that was kind of like the
Oh,
first.
black opal is so pretty. I don't, I mean, opals themselves are pretty expensive. So I only have like, I have like a little bag of like little opal chips. They're beautiful, but black opal, super expensive, but is really, really pretty. It looks almost like a translucent black moonstone. It's really
Ooh,
pretty. Yeah.
amazing. So the plant information. So these two have that silver on one side and the green on the other.
Mm.
They have that aspect as well, as the white poplar. So when the wind blows, it appears that it shivers. Okay, so and they make this whispering sound. So you get this idea of the trembling or the quaking aspen from that. And you're not supposed to take bark from the trunk of the tree because you could kill the tree. So
Mm.
you only take the bark from the branches. And we talked about this before, but cottonwoods and poplars are in the same species. They're all populus. So aspen, cottonwood, and poplars are all populus. That's the species that they are, but they're different varieties of that species. So it's often conflated, and that's why there's so much overlap between the last presentation and this one. So the Greek word for aspen is aspis, and it's translated to shield. So we can see some of these protective qualities as well in that. And this was the one that we talked about. What was it called? The pando,
Oh yeah,
fog.
Pando, yeah.
Yeah. So there's is so I don't know if let's see. Oh yeah. So there we go. So I talk about it, but so a group of aspen trees is a single organism. And each tree is a replica of the one that's next to it because it has this intensive underground root system. And like like before a single aspen trunk appears in the surface, like the whole root system, it can lay dormant for years until the conditions are right, until there's enough sunlight, enough water. So it's like hard to kill the root system of an aspen because it can be dormant for a long time. So in Utah's Fish Lake National Forest, in a national forest, I don't know if Fish Lake is a national forest, but I think it is because I got it from the National Forest website. Maybe it's a national
Mm.
forest, not a national park. So there we go. There's the difference. So
Mm.
that's that pando like set of trees. It's the oldest known aspen clone, and it's lived more than 80,000 years. So there we go.
Crazy.
And it is a deciduous tree, and it has softer wood as well. So now let's just move on to lore, stories, and cultural import. And there is some, I noticed that there was some when Raven, when you were doing the like you were doing this part of your presentation, there was some overlap. So we're gonna
Mm.
like this one for so it's linked, the aspen is linked with Hades. So after Heracles, and it could be a poplar or it could be aspen, returned from Hades, he wove an aspen wreath and burned a fire of aspen wood to thank Zeus for his return. It's also sacred to Persephone. So it's said that Persephone owned a grove of aspens in Britain, and she would give protection to anyone who went in and out of Hades with a crown of aspen, or in and out of the underworld, I should say, not Hades. So there you go. With a crown of aspen leaves. So the white side would press against their brow, and the green side would be exposed. So that's how the leaves became colored the way they were. So
Mm.
the darker side would be exposed to the heat of the underworld, and the inner side would be pressed against their forehead so it would stay white. So in Mesopotamia, gold they have found like wreaths that were made from gold of aspen like leaves that were engraved from 5,000 years ago. And so we have some general Christian lore and then we have some site specific Christian lore. So this is like just general Christian lore about aspens, and it kind of like translates over. We were talking about it before, but it's supposed to be a thrice cursed tree. So here's a little saying about it. Trembles yon towering aspen tree, like one whose bygone deeds of ill at hush of night before him sweep to scare his dreams and murder sleep. Interesting. So
Interesting.
I know in Scotland, and I use the same picture because we're still talking about this sadly cursed tree, although I love it, so I don't care if it's cursed.
Mm.
It's considered a cursed tree, and even fishermen avoid using wood for their gear from aspen because it's cursed.
Mm.
So in Celtic lore, it's associated with grief and death. And if you want to you can make a wand of aspen. I don't know how you say that word, but it means wand of aspen. And
Mm.
a wand of aspen, this specific one was used to measure graves and corpses.
Mm.
It is the Ogham letter E, and it's Edad. And I always put this is from that book, and I hope I put the name of that book because otherwise I'll go fetch it. But the insight
Mm.
is Aspen reminds us to strengthen our communication with the ancestors, the spirits, and the gods and goddesses. The divinatory meaning, a tree of communication with the dead. If you think of Aspen, you're supposed to strengthen your communication with the spirit realms, or something is past, or it's passing out of your life. So again, on the that's goes along kind of with Poplar about being on the
Mm.
boundary markers. So you're supposed
Mm.
to give thanks for all that's been and prepare for a change. It's also about bravery and overcoming fear. I found that
Mm.
someplace else. And I don't think I did put this. So the affirmation is trembling aspen, like you, I stand in awe of the divine as it manifests within and without creation. And I am offering up a prayer of thanks. So let me just grab that book so that everybody knows where I got this from. It's
Mm.
from that A Druid's Herbal of Sacred Tree Medicine by Ellen Everett Hopman. That's where I get these little insights, divinatory meanings, and affirmations when we're doing Ogham
Mm.
trees.
Nice.
So in France, obviously we're back to Christian mythology here. So it said that the leaves of on an aspen shake due to a religious belief that the leaves shook with fear because Christ's cross was made from aspen wood. And here's in Germany another. I love this picture.
Uh,
Okay, so in Germany, it was legend that the aspen was the only tree that refused to acknowledge him. So Jesus placed a curse on the aspen, which caused the tree to tremble in fear.
Oh, that's funny.
I know. So then in Russia, we have some interesting little stories about aspen. So, I don't know what that used. Okay, so it was used for turning into a werewolf from the bathhouse at midnight. So Boyer told me this one.
Mm.
And so this is the exact quote from her book. So, in the ocean sea, on the Isle of Buon, in the open plain, shines the moon upon an aspen stump. Into the greenwood, into the spreading vale, around the stump goes a shaggy wolf. Under his teeth are all the horned cattle, but into the wood the wolf goes not. In the vale the wolf does not roam. Moon, moon, golden horns, melt the bullet, blunt the knife, rot the cudgel, strike fear into man, beast, and reptile, so that they may not seize the gray wolf, nor tear from him his warm hide. My word is firm, firmer than the sleep or the strength of heroes. So that's,
Hmm.
I love that.
Nice.
Anyway,
Yeah, me too.
so Aspen. So you can drive an aspen stake into the grave of a witch to prevent her from rising from the
Nice.
dead. And if you place aspen logs in a stove upside down on Holy Thursday, which is in Holy Week. So Holy Thursday is when they like wash the feet, when Jesus washed the feet in
Oh,
the upper room. And
mm,
yeah, so I think that's when you get like, it was supposed to, yeah, anyway. So if you place aspen logs in a stove upside down on Holy Thursday, all the witches and wizards will come and ask for embers. You can
and
identify.
that's how you make friends.
Exactly. So go do that. If you're a witch, go do
Yeah.
that and invite your friends over. Have a
Yeah.
non-holy Thursday.
Uh,
So magical properties, and there aren't a ton of them. I will tell you that. Like there aren't like Aspen,
mm,
like I feel like you had even more for Poplar, but because I was like kind
mm,
of trying to like link it directly to Aspen, I didn't find like a ton. So fear, it's linked with fear because of the trembling of the leaves. And in the language of flowers, it symbolizes fear, scandal, and lamentation.
mm.
I know. It's used for protection. So if you plant an aspen tree in a field near your house, it's supposed to give you safety from thieves. And I found that a lot. Like protection from
Yeah.
thieves was like a big deal for
Hmm.
aspen. So it's, and some say it gives you protection on all levels. So whatever you need protection from. It's also obviously associated with communication. So you can have eloquence in speech, hence the throat chakra connection. And it's because it said that the wind moves through the leaves, and as it does, it makes this whispering sound. And so it can prevent, you can improve your mastery of languages by placing a leaf under your tongue, which I need. I'm no good at languages. I try and try and try. I really
Mm,
think so. Beyond magic, I really think it's like a genetic thing. Like you're born with like
mm,
some people are just born with this like genetic predisposition. If you're not taught in childhood when that like part of your brain is opened up, which many other cultures are, by the way, it can be very difficult to learn a new language. And so if you have people in your community that can't speak English very well, you should be very nice to them because it's damn hard to learn a
honestly.
new language. Like it
Yeah.
is hard
Especially
for some.
English.
I know, and it's really hard.
English
And
has
some
so many rules.
it does. And you know what? Some people just do it so easy. Like my boyfriend, he just can learn. He just I feel like it's somehow tied to people who I always ask because people who do music or art and have that like brain part
Mm,
opened in a weird way and can like pick up any musical instrument and play a Native American pipe or play the drums or play guitar, they just pick up any instrument. Like a lot of times that like language component of your brain is like cracked open as well. It's like there's some sort of genetic link, and then there's also like this nurturing like part, like a time period where like languages come much, if you introduce new languages at that time, it's probably a lot easier to stick them in your head. Anyway, just my two
yeah.
cents on languages. But if you want, if you're like me and you cannot do a language, you may want to get an aspen leaf and place it under your tongue and hope for the best.
The best you can do
Exactly, because
sometimes.
I like am like
Mm.
a guy in my work is always telling me you speak Spanish good, and I'm like, I do not. Like I literally will translate and then say it to him. Like I speak Spanish good. Like I speak it. Like I say it on
Yeah.
the radio. I'm like, and then I
Yeah.
just because it's nice for him. Like he speaks like he's the opposite. He's like with English how I'm with Spanish, and he does the same thing.
Oh.
So that's how we communicate. Anyway,
Mm.
The aspen will help you communicate with spirits, so that might be easier for me. It's also associated with death in the underworld, as we've seen all over the place. It's associated with resurrection and underworld journeys into Hades, Thonic. So that's CHTO, whatever, Thonic journey. It's also obviously associated with air magic and healing. And let me just tell you, we are going to go on a deep dive of indigenous healing with Aspen. So hunker down, folks, buckle in. So we're going to first talk about like just what I found like through my non indigenous books. So obviously we talked about this before. There's like the bark has pain killing properties, especially the inner bark. Salicylates or salicylates. I don't know how to say that. It's similar
Mm.
to aspirin. So that salicin is like, that's what is in aspirin. So you can make a poultice to soothe bruises and cuts. It's also anti-inflammatory, probably because of the same compound, right? It's supposed to
Mm.
ease cramps. So it's good for colds and sore throats. You can use the resinous buds in an infusion, especially if they're collected in the winter. We talked about this with the poplar too, fevers. So this is one of those magical medicinal kind of folk remedies. So fever can be transferred to an aspen tree by tying a ribbon to the branch by the sufferer. And here's another one. Go up to an aspen at midnight and cut a hole in the tree and place your nail clippings in the hole, not the hold, and
Mhm.
stop it and then stop it up to reduce your
Hmm.
fever. Or you can just use a decoction of the inner bark. So again, the aspirin is probably tied to that. So ague, and I had to look up exactly what that was and how it differed from fever. So this is like ague is like a reoccurring type of fever with chills, and it goes chills and then fever and chills and then fever, and it's associated with malaria actually. So if you feel like you have ague, you might want to go get tested.
Hmm.
So, and we talked about this before. You can pin a lock of your hair to the aspen tree while saying, aspen tree, I prithee to shake and shiver instead of me. So
Nice.
that's a different kind of rhyme, you can tell.
Mm.
So also externally, so you can use it for warts. And this is kind of a folk remedy. You can take bacon and rub the wart with bacon, and then you hide the bacon in a slit in the aspen tree.
Interesting.
I don't know exactly.
Mm.
Or you can just put like some vinegar on the wart, or you can even put a
Mhm.
band-aid on your wart because a wart is human papillomavirus and it'll resolve itself anyway. But the more you draw attention to the wart, you like in your mind, make it like a little
Mm.
uncomfortable, your body will go and take care of it. So
Mm.
anyway, that's that. So burns and inflammation, it's good externally. So you can use the resinous buds collected in winter. So for teething rings for babies, probably because it has pain relieving properties. It's used for urinary complaints, and you can use a decoction of the bark as a diuretic. And then shaking afflictions. And obviously this was a folk remedy. It's tied to like um the trembling of the aspen. So it's the same
Mm.
rhyme for ague, but you can use it for palsy. Also, I found it all over the place for like sexually transmitted infections. People use it for gonorrhea. So there you go.
Mm.
Now, the indigenous North America. And there's two types of aspens that are the most popular and most used medicinally. The trembling aspen is used and it's huge. We're going to go through every nation and we're going to talk how they
Mm.
use it. So first of all, we're going to talk about the Populus grandidentata. Okay, so the Cree use it as an abortifacient and a gynecological aid, and they use an infusion to ease and lessen menses. Iroquois Nation use it as a dermatological aid, and there's dust on the tree that you can get and apply to like itchy areas, and we're going to hear about this dust again. I don't know how you say it, malachite or malachite or whatever. They use it as a dietary aid, and they use an infusion of the bark to stimulate the appetite. The Ojibwa Nation is a hemostat, so you can use an infusion of the young root. Now we're going to move into like tons and tons of information. And this is by that guy, Moerman, Mormon, which is very
Mm.
strange to me that that's his name. Populus tremuloides, and that's that quaking aspen. So the Abnaki use it as an anthelmintic, so for verms, like a vermifuge.
Booms.
Exactly. And the Algonquin from this place use it for York, which is ye old rheumatism cure. The Bella Coola people, which I love Bella Coola. That's like one of my favorite names, by the way. Gonorrhea and urethral hemorrhage. The Blackfoot Nation uses it as an infusion of bark for heartburn, also for women about to give birth and for general discomfort. The Carrier people, the Southern Carrier, use a decoction of the bark for stomach pains. Chippewa use a poultice of chewed bark for cuts. They use an infusion of the roots for too much blood during menses, and a decoction of the inner bark for heart trouble, and they prepare it ceremonially. The Woodland Cree use a poultice for bee stings. And then they use the white powder of the outer bark as a styptic, and the bark scraped, the inner bark scraped for venereal disease. The Ontario Delaware people use the bark for colds. The Flathead people use an infusion of the bark for ruptures. I don't know what that is, but if you have a rupture, be careful. The Gixon, and I've never even heard of this nation, but very interested in it. They use a bark as a purgative and a poultice of the chewed root for cuts. The Haisla use a decoction of the bark as a laxative, and the Haisla and Hanaxiala chew the leaves for mouth abscesses. The Iroquois people use it as a vermifuge, so a decoction of the bark for verms, an infusion of the bark for cramps by verms, an infusion of the bark for measles, a poultice of the bark for pleurisy, an infusion of the bark of young trees for when a baby cries and they're not sick at all, an infusion of the bark or a decoction of the young roots for verms, and they use it for bedwetting, and an infusion of the roots or bark for venereal diseases, and you can use it on horses, dogs, and cats who have worms as well, so a veterinary aid. The Meskwaki, you can use a decoction of the buds as a nasal salve. The Micmac Nation uses a bark for colds and to stimulate the appetite. The Montagnais, infusion of bark for children who have verms. Lots of vermifuge uses here. Ojibwa people, a poultice for cuts and wounds, and the inner bark for sore arms or legs. And then you can use it as a splint as well. Apparently it's like for splints. Probably because it's like thin, and I don't know. I could imagine how that would work. This is interesting too, an interesting new use. The Okanagan Colville people, they use the bark powder, which we've talked about. They use it as a deodorant for under the arms or on your feet, and an infusion of the young growth for a bruised eye. We're going to see this in another use as well. So the Okanagan use a decoction of stems and branches externally or internally for York, and a decoction of stems and branches for dyspepsia. There's more. There's so many. Everybody in Indigenous North America was using this trembling aspen. Very popular, highly important tree. The Paiute used an infusion of the inner barks for coughs from pneumonia. I know it's pneumonia, but pneumonia. Penobscot used an infusion as a diaphoretic for colds, which it means it made you like sweat, so you sweated it out. The Potawatomi, they burned the ashes and mixed with lard for horse sores. Excuse me.
Hmm.
Salish Nation used a decoction of the rootlets and stems for syphilis. So we had gonorrhea, we have syphilis.
Mm.
The Shoshone used a decoction of the bark for long time venereal disease. The Sikani used an infusion of scraped bark for verms, another vermifuge, and a poultice of pulverized bark and water for wounds. The Tanana, the upper Tanana, used a decoction of the inner bark and the outer bark for colds and coughs. The Tiwa used a decoction of leaves for urinary trouble. And the Thompson used a decoction of stems and branches both externally and internally for York. They took wood ash and they mixed it with water or grease as a salve for swellings. So then they also used this powdery bark for an interesting thing. They would use it to inhibit hair growth on girls' armpits and boys' faces and arms, which was interesting.
Interesting.
I know. They
Mm.
used a decoction of bark rubbed on adolescent bodies to purify them, a decoction of stems and branches for dyspepsia, a decoction of branches for insanity from heavy drinking, a decoction of branches or roots as wash for syphilis. And then here are my sources for all of that interesting stuff. And that's that. Yay. So there's,
Very
like I said, there
nice.
was a ton of stuff on that, but we kind of, I think we've rounded out our populus discussion and we've
Mm.
gotten a full picture of the populus species there. And I hope you all liked it. Like and subscribe below, and we will see you at the next Ditch Witch Diaries.